The Meridian starship plummeted through the atmosphere, trailing fire like a dying comet. Inside the burning vessel, Commander Elise Vega gripped the controls with white knuckles, her dark eyes reflecting emergency lights as alarms screamed around her. "Damage report," she barked, voice steady despite the violent shuddering of the ship. "Life support failing. Hull integrity at 38%. Main drives gone." Lieutenant Orion's voice cracked as he worked frantically at his station. "Commander, we're not going to make it." Elise refused to accept that. "Reroute auxiliary power to stabilizers. We're putting down on that plateau." The uncharted planet loomed beneath them, an emerald and azure jewel that would either be their salvation or their grave. 3 days earlier, their exploration vessel had been ambushed by the Vraxian Armada, the most feared military force in the known universe. The Meridian's escape had been nothing short of miraculous, but the damage was catastrophic. As the ship carved through cloud layers, Elise caught glimpses of vast forests and glittering oceans. Beauty before death, she thought grimly. The impact came with a deafening roar. Metal screamed against stone as the Meridian carved a half-mile trench across the plateau. When the world stopped spinning, silence fell, save for the hiss of ruptured systems and the groan of cooling metal. Elise regained consciousness, hanging awkwardly in her restraints, tasting blood. "Report," she mumbled, struggling to focus. When no response came, ice formed in her stomach. "Orion? Kira? Renner?" Her crew of 26 lay motionless at their stations. With trembling fingers, she checked vitals on the nearest body. Nothing. One by one, she confirmed what she already knew. She was alone. Grief would come later. Training took over as she gathered emergency supplies and prepared to exit the wreckage. The ship's sensors indicated breathable atmosphere but warned of approaching life signs, massive ones. Standing at the ruptured airlock, medkit and pulse rifle in hand, Elise stepped onto alien soil. The twin suns beat down on her face as she surveyed the destruction behind her and the pristine wilderness ahead. That's when she saw them. 12-foot-tall figures moving through the trees, their crystalline armor catching sunlight like prisms. The Vraxians had found her. But something was wrong. These weren't standard troops. The central figure wore elaborate armor that seemed to shift colors with every movement, the mark of Vraxian royalty. Supreme Warlord Kandrith Zal, architect of 1,000 conquests, stood before her. His species was humanoid but evolved for war. Towering height, reinforced skeletal structure, and skin like burnished copper. His eyes, with vertical pupils like a cat's, regarded her with disturbing intensity. "Commander Elise Vega," he said, her name sounding strange in his resonant voice. The only human to have ever escaped a Vraxian ambush. She raised her rifle. "Come to finish the job?" A sound like grinding stones emerged from his throat. Laughter. "If I wished you dead, you would be. No, I've come to offer terms. I don't negotiate with war criminals." "You misunderstand. I'm not offering terms to your people." Kandrith took a step forward, dwarfing her. "I'm offering them to you personally." "Why would?" "Because in 600 years of conquest, I've never encountered anyone like you." His massive hand gestured to the wreckage. "You escaped my finest ships. You survived a crash that killed your entire crew. You stand before me now, injured but defiant." He tilted his head. Such extraordinary qualities should not be wasted. Elise's finger tightened on the trigger. "What exactly are you proposing?" Kandrith's expression shifted into something unreadable. "Join me. Stand at my side as I conquer the stars. The galaxy could be ours." The absurdity almost made her laugh despite everything. "And why would I ever agree to that?" His answer chilled her to the bone. "Because if you refuse, I will turn my armada toward Earth." 3 standard months had passed since Elise reluctantly boarded the Vraxian flagship Inevitability. Her quarters, though luxurious by human standards, remained a gilded cage. Daily, she reminded herself of the stakes, Earth's safety, as she navigated life among aliens who had slaughtered millions across countless worlds. Kandrith had kept his word, withdrawing Vraxian forces from human territories. But his fascination with her had only grown, manifesting in unsettling ways. He requested her presence at strategic meetings, valuing her tactical insights while dismissing his general's objections. He presented her with artifacts from conquered civilizations, watching intently as she examined them. Today, Elise stood on the command deck as the massive warship approached a water planet called Lysithea. Kandreth entered, his 12-foot frame causing other Vraxians to bow deeply. "The Lysithians have refused our terms," he announced, moving to stand beside her. "Standard protocol dictates orbital bombardment." Her stomach churned. "And you're telling me this because I wish to know what you would do." This was his game, testing her morality against his cold pragmatism. "Negotiate again. Their aquatic technology is unmatched. Destroying them gains you nothing. They believe we lack resolve." His vertical pupils narrowed. "Perhaps I should demonstrate otherwise. Or demonstrate that superior strength allows for mercy." She met his gaze. "True power isn't about destruction, Kandreth." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, at her use of his name rather than his title. After a prolonged silence, he issued new orders. "Establish communication with the Lysithian Council. We will offer revised terms." Later, in her quarters, Elise recorded her daily log, encrypted messages she hoped might someday reach Earth. The door chimed, and she quickly shut down the transmission. Kandreth rarely visited her private space. He entered, ducking beneath the doorframe with a formal dignity that seemed at odds with his fearsome reputation. "You changed my mind today. About destroying an entire civilization? Don't expect gratitude." "I expect nothing," he replied, "except your continued honesty." "Why are you really here, Kandreth?" He hesitated, then produced a small crystal sphere from a compartment in his armor. "This belongs to a race we conquered centuries ago. They called it a memory stone." He placed it on her table. "It contains my memories of the day we met." Elise approached cautiously. "Why show me this?" "Because you believe me incapable of change." His voice softened. "Touch it if you wish to understand." Against better judgment, she placed her palm on the cool crystal. Images flooded her mind. The plateau through Kandreth's eyes, but with startling context. His scouts had tracked her ship's descent, not to finish her off, but because he had been tracking her specifically for months. More disturbing was sensing his emotions, an alien admiration bordering on reverence as he watched her emerge from the wreckage, bloodied but unbowed. In his centuries of existence, he had never encountered anyone who stirred such fascination. She yanked her hand away, breathless. "You've been watching me since the Arcturus campaign. You outmaneuvered my fleet with a damaged frigate and skeleton crew." His massive hand closed around the memory stone. "You were supposed to die there like all who oppose us. Instead, you escaped. It unsettled me. So, I'm just a curiosity to be studied?" The thought was somehow worse than being a political prisoner. "No." His gaze held hers. "You are the first being in centuries to make me question my purpose." Before she could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Supreme Warlord to command deck," a voice announced. "Insurrection detected in the Cygnus sector." Kandreth straightened. "We will continue this discussion another time." As he departed, Elise stared at the memory stone he had deliberately left behind. In it lay dangerous knowledge, and perhaps the key to understanding her captor. The Cygnus insurrection changed everything. Rather than merely observing Vraxian tactics, Elise found herself reluctantly drawn into their strategic planning. The rebels, calling themselves the Coalition of Free Worlds, had developed weaponry specifically designed to penetrate Vraxian crystalline armor. "Their projectiles contain a resonance frequency that shatters our defenses," explained Admiral Vorax, a battle-scarred veteran whose mistrust of Elise was barely concealed. 3 outposts lost in 7 cycles. Kandreth paced the war room, his massive form casting shifting shadows across the holographic display. Recommendations? Various strategies were proposed, all involving overwhelming force and acceptable Casualties. Elise remained silent until directly addressed. You've been unusually quiet, Commander Vega, Kandrith said, using her military title, a small respect he insisted upon despite objections from his generals. What would humanity do in this? She stepped forward, aware of hostile eyes tracking her movement. You're fighting this wrong. The coalition doesn't have your resources or numbers. They're using asymmetric warfare. Traditional Vraxian tactics play into their strategy. Explain, Kandrith commanded. They want you to deploy large forces, easier targets for their new weapons. Instead, send small, specialized units with modified armor. Change the resonance frequency of your crystalline plating. Admiral Vorax hissed. This human would have us abandoned centuries of proven doctrine. Your proven doctrine just lost you 3 outposts, Elise countered. The room fell silent. No one contradicted the Supreme Warlord, and by extension contradicting his guest was equally dangerous. Kandrith's laughter broke the tension. Implement Commander Vega's recommendations. Vorax, you will personally lead the specialized EOR units. Later, as Elise entered her quarters, she found Kandrith waiting, a breach of their unspoken boundaries. He stood by her viewport, the light of passing stars illuminating his copper skin. Your strategy succeeded, he said without preamble. Minimal casualties. The coalition leadership has been captured. You're welcome, she said tersely. The memory stone, did you explore it further? She had, though reluctantly. I saw enough to know you've been manipulating me from the start. His expression shifted. Is that what you believe? I believe the fearsome Supreme Warlord doesn't bring a human into his confidence without ulterior motives. She stepped closer, emboldened by anger. What is it you really want from me, Kandrith? The silence between them stretched like a live wire. Finally he spoke. Understanding. Of what? Of why, after centuries of unquestioned conquest, your existence causes me to hesitate before destruction. Of why your opinion matters when no other beings has in 500 years. His voice lowered. I have raised worlds without remorse, yet the thought of disappointing you disturbs me. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither was prepared to address. The coalition prisoners, she said abruptly. What happens to them? Execution, as is our custom. No. The word emerged before she could consider its consequences. Kandrith tilted his head. You would challenge our ways again? Yes. Elise met his gaze steadily. If I truly have influence with you, then this is where I use it. Spare them. For what purpose? To show that the mighty Vraxians can evolve beyond mere conquest. She took a calculated risk. To prove that you meant what you just said about change. For a moment she glimpsed conflict in those alien eyes, the weight of centuries of tradition against something new and fragile. Very well, he finally said. They will be imprisoned rather than executed, but this mercy comes with conditions. Which are, you will personally interrogate their leader, learn the extent of their coalition, and, he moved closer, towering over her. You will accompany me to the Galactic Summit on Nexus Prime, where the major powers gather each decade. Elise frowned. As what? Your trophy? As my advisor. His massive hand lifted, stopping just short of touching her face. And as living proof that coexistence is possible. The implication staggered her. Was the most feared warlord in the galaxy considering peace? Or was this another layer of manipulation? As if reading her thoughts, Kandrith added, Doubt my methods if you must, Elise, but never doubt that your presence has changed the course of an empire. The Galactic Summit transformed Nexus Prime into a showcase of power and wealth. Representatives from 17 major civilizations converged on the neutral world, their ships forming a glittering constellation in orbit. The Vraxian delegation drew fearful stares as they processed through the grand concourse. 12-foot warriors led by their supreme warlord, with a lone human walking at his side. Whispers followed them. Is that Commander Vega? Earth's hero? Vraxian collaborator? Elise maintained her composure, dressed in a formal uniform that blended Vraxian and human design elements. Kandreth's idea, a visual representation of their unusual alliance. While she understood the symbolism, she resented being part of this spectacle. The Arcturian ambassador approaches, Kandreth murmured. They were allies with your fleet before our encounter. Ambassador Laurel was tall by human standards but still had to look up at Kandreth. Her silvery skin shimmered as she performed a formal greeting, then addressed Elise directly. Commander Vega, your presence here is unexpected. Ambassador, Elise replied cautiously. Earth mourned you as lost in action. Laurel's multifaceted eyes narrowed. Yet, here you stand beside the being who destroyed half our combined fleet. Before Elise could respond, Kandreth intervened. Commander Vega serves as my advisor on human affairs. Her counsel has proven invaluable. Indeed? Laurel's tone carried unmistakable accusation. And does your advisor know about the Vraxian fleet amassing near the Terran exclusion zone? Elise's blood ran cold. She turned to Kandreth, who maintained perfect composure. A defensive repositioning only, he stated. Perhaps we should discuss actual diplomacy rather than military deployments, Ambassador. Later, in their assigned quarters, Elise confronted him. Is it true? Are you positioning ships near Earth? Standard protocol during the summit, he replied, removing pieces of his ceremonial armor. All powers secure their interests while leadership is gathered here. That wasn't part of our agreement. Our agreement was that I would not attack Earth. I have honored that. His vertical pupils fixed on her. You believe I would lie to you? I believe you're still a Vraxian warlord regardless of whatever confusion exists between us. The word hung in the air, acknowledging the unspoken tension that had grown during their months together. There is no confusion on my part, Kandreth said quietly. Only clarity that came too late in a too long existence. A chime interrupted them, a message from the coalition leader whom Elise had interrogated. Tazil was a shrewd tactician who had reluctantly cooperated after Elise convinced him that Kandreth was considering evolutionary changes to the Empire. The message was encrypted for her eyes only. Vraxian traditionalists planning coup during summit. Supreme warlords shift toward diplomacy seen as weakness. Admiral Vorax leads conspiracy. Proof attached. The attached files confirmed her worst fears. Vorax had been building support among Vraxian military commanders who viewed Kandreth's changing policies as heresy against their conquering nature. The plan was to assassinate him during tomorrow's plenary session and frame the coalition, triggering a new era of even more aggressive expansion. Kandreth, she said, decision made. We have a problem. She shared Tazil's warning, watching as Kandreth absorbed the betrayal of his most trusted admiral. His reaction surprised her. Not rage, but thoughtful calculation. This presents an opportunity, he finally said. For what? Getting yourself killed? For proving to you and the galaxy that my intentions are genuine. He moved closer, his massive frame somehow less intimidating than it once had been. Tomorrow I will announce a fundamental restructuring of the Vraxian Empire. They'll never let you finish such a speech. Precisely. A predatory smile spread across his face, which is why we will be ready for them. As they strategized through the night, Elise realized how seamlessly they worked together, human adaptability complementing Vraxian strength. More disturbing was the realization that somewhere during these months, she had stopped seeing him as her captor, or even as an alien warlord. Why are you really doing this? She asked as dawn approached. Risking everything you've built over centuries? His answer was simple. Because the galaxy I conquered no longer interests me, but a galaxy we might build together. That is worth the risk. The Grand Assembly Hall of Nexus Prime vibrated with tension as delegates from 17 civilizations arranged themselves according to ancient protocols. At the center of the chamber stood the speaker's circle, where each representative would address the gathered powers. Elise sat among the Vraxian delegation, the only human in a sea of copper-skinned giants. Their plan was set. Kandreth would announce his revolutionary reforms, drawing out the conspirators. Hidden loyalists would intercept the assassins while Elise activated a shield system, modified from coalition technology, to protect the Supreme Warlord. What Kandreth didn't know was that Elise had made contingency plans of her own. During the night, she had sent encrypted messages to both Earth's representatives and coalition contacts. If things went sideways, she needed allies. Admiral Vorax entered with his honor guard, taking position directly opposite their delegation. His eyes briefly met Elise's, filled with contempt. The Arcturian delegation recognizes Commander Vega, Ambassador Laurel announced suddenly. We request she address the summit regarding her unique position. A trap. This wasn't part of the protocol. Kandreth started to object, but Elise touched his arm, a gesture that caused murmurs throughout the hall. I accept. As she walked to the speaker's circle, Elise could feel the weight of countless eyes, some curious, others hostile. This wasn't part of their carefully constructed plan, but perhaps it offered a better opportunity. Distinguished delegates, she began, I stand before you as both a commander of Earth's fleet and advisor to Supreme Warlord Kandreth Zal. Many call this treason. Perhaps it would be, if my goal remained what it once was. She paused, scanning the vast chamber. For generations, this summit has maintained an illusion of peace while preparing for inevitable conflict. The Vraxian Empire conquers. The rest of you fortify. The cycle continues. Her voice strengthened. But cycles can be broken. Vorax shifted uncomfortably as she continued. Supreme Warlord Kandreth has spent centuries conquering worlds, amassing power unmatched in our galaxy. And now, she turned to look directly at him. He stands ready to use that power not for further conquest, but to establish genuine cooperation. Disbelieving murmurs swept through the chamber. This is human deception, Vorax finally erupted. The Supreme Warlord would never abandon our sacred mandate to dominate. Then let him speak for himself, Elise challenged. Kandreth rose, his massive form commanding immediate silence. As he approached the speaker's circle, Elise activated the shield device concealed in her uniform. Their eyes met briefly, an unspoken communication that had become second nature. For 6 centuries, Kandreth began, I have led our empire in fulfilling the mandate of our ancestors. Every world within our reach has faced the same choice, submit or perish. His resonant voice filled the chamber. And in all that time, not once did I question whether our path was just. Vorax's hand moved subtly toward his ceremonial armor, where Elise knew he had concealed a resonance weapon. But destiny sent me a challenge unlike any other, Kandreth continued. Not a military force or technological marvel, but a single human who dared defy me, who showed me that true strength lies not in destruction, but in the courage to evolve. The attack came swiftly. 5 Vraxian officers drew weapons. Simultaneously, the shield around Kandreth activated just as the first resonance blast struck, dispersing the energy harmlessly. Loyal guards intercepted the conspirators, but in the chaos, Vorax lunged directly for Elise. Human witch, he snarled, massive hands closing around her throat. You've poisoned his mind. As she struggled for breath, a terrifying roar filled the chamber. Kandreth moved with unexpected speed, tearing Vorax away and hurling him bodily across the speaker's circle. She showed me a better path, Kandreth growled, standing protectively before Elise. One that your limited vision cannot comprehend. The rebellion collapsed as quickly as it had begun. Conspirators were subdued, and order gradually returned to the stunned assembly. Kandreth helped Elise to her feet, surprising everyone, including her, by keeping her hand in his massive grip as he again addressed the summit. Today marks the end of the Vraxian Empire as you have known it, he announced. In its place, I propose the Galactic Covenant, with equal representation for all member worlds. The Vraxian fleets will serve not as conquerors, but as protectors of our shared civilization. As the implications of his words spread through the chamber, Elise finally understood the truth. This wasn't mere political calculation or strategic repositioning. Kandreth Zal, destroyer of worlds, had found something worth more than conquest, and he was looking right at her. One standard year after the Nexus Prime Summit, the newly established Central Council of the Galactic Covenant gathered on Earth, a symbolic choice that acknowledged humanity's pivotal role in this unprecedented alliance. Representatives from 29 civilizations, including former Vraxian subject worlds now granted autonomy, convened in a purpose-built chamber overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Elise stood at a viewport in her private office adjacent to the council chamber, watching Kandreth's shuttle descend through Earth's atmosphere. Their relationship had evolved into something neither of them had vocabulary to define. Part diplomatic partnership, part personal connection that transcended their biological differences. For months, they had traveled separately throughout former Vraxian territories, she as Earth's representative and he as the transitional authority, dismantling an empire while building something new in its place. The work demanded their full attention, leaving little time to address the unspoken bond between them. Admiral Moraine, Earth's defense chief, entered without knocking. Commander Vega, we need to discuss the Proxima issue before the session begins. Not now, Admiral. With respect, it can't wait. Some of the council members are suggesting that Kandreth's interest in you has unduly influenced Earth's position in the Covenant. Elise turned slowly. Careful with your next words. I'm simply conveying concerns, Commander. Your history with the former Supreme Warlord is complicated. My history includes preventing a war that would have devastated Earth, she replied coldly. Everything else is irrelevant to this council. Is it? Moraine pressed. Because the Arcturians are questioning whether humanity has traded one form of subjugation for another. They call you his. That's enough. The deep voice from the doorway silenced them both. Kandreth entered, ducking beneath the human-proportioned frame. Though he wore diplomatic attire rather than battle armor, his presence still filled the room with an almost palpable energy. To Moraine's credit, the Admiral held their ground. Covenant Representative Zal, Moraine acknowledged, stiffly. Admiral, Kandreth replied. If you would excuse us, Commander Vega and I have matters to discuss before the session. When they were alone, Elise allowed herself a moment of unguarded reaction. You're early. Intentionally so. He moved, closer, alien eyes studying her with familiar intensity. Reports reached me about growing resistance among certain council members. Nothing I can't handle. I have no doubt. A hint of his predatory smile appeared. But perhaps we should address the core issue rather than its political manifestations. Which is that across 24 worlds beings whisper that Kandreth Zal, destroyer of civilizations, surrendered his empire for the love of a human woman. The directness of his statement stole her breath. During their months of diplomatic work, they had carefully avoided naming the connection between them. Is that what happened? She asked quietly. I offered you a galaxy once, he reminded her. You refused it. I refused conquest, not... She stopped herself. Not what, Elise? The council chamber chime sounded, indicating members were assembling. Neither moved. We have responsibilities, she said finally. Yes. To the Covenant. He took another step closer. And to truth. What truth would that be? That I have lived for centuries, conquered worlds without number, and only began to truly exist the day you stood before me, defiant and magnificent, on that distant plateau. His voice deepened. That everything I have built and destroyed means nothing compared to what I feel when you speak my name. The confession hung between them, bridging the vast differences of their origins, biology, and histories. The council is waiting, she said, though she made no move toward the door. Let them wait. His massive hand reached toward her face, hesitating just short of contact. Always careful about their physical differences, always uncertain if his touch was welcome. "I have given up an empire, Elise. Tell me it was not in vain." She closed, the distance between them, placing her palm against his copper-hued face. "It wasn't in vain, Kandrith." When they finally entered the council chamber together, the assembled representatives fell silent, observing the human commander and former warlord with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright disapproval. Ambassador Laurel of Arcturus rose first. "Before we commence formal proceedings, the Arcturian Collective wishes to address concerns regarding the unusual relationship between Earth's representative and the former Supreme Warlord." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Kandrith tensed. Beside her, but Elise stepped forward into the center of the circular chamber. "I welcome the ambassador's concerns," she said clearly. "In fact, I'll address them directly. Yes, there exists a profound connection between myself and Kandrith Zal, a connection that began in conflict, evolved through respect, and eventually transformed an empire." She turned slowly, meeting the eyes of representatives from worlds that had suffered under Vraxian rule. Some whisper that I've fallen under alien influence. Others suggest Earth has secured favorable treatment through my personal relationship. Her voice strengthened. The truth is simpler and more powerful. Two beings from vastly different worlds discovered that connection transcends conquest. That understanding outweighs dominance. That love, she paused as the word echoed through the chamber, can accomplish what centuries of warfare could not. Kandrith moved to stand beside her, his massive form no longer intimidating but protective. Together they faced the council that would shape the future of thousands of worlds. The Galactic Covenant exists because a warlord learned to see beyond conquest, Elise continued. If our unlikely bond disturbs you, consider this. If a human commander and Vraxian warlord can find common ground, what might be possible for all our civilizations? Silence held for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, Tazil of the former. "The coalition fought Vraxian expansion for generations," he said. "We lost worlds, families, hope itself. When Commander Vega first spoke of Kandrith Zal's transformation, I believed it a tactical deception." He inclined his head toward them. "I was wrong. Their connection, however improbable, has created something unprecedented, genuine peace." One by one, representatives signaled agreement until only Ambassador Laurel remained opposed. "This is a beautiful story," she conceded. "But history is filled with beautiful stories that end in betrayal." "True enough," Kandrith responded, his voice softer than his imposing presence suggested. "But history is also changed by those willing to write new stories." He looked down at Elise, centuries of conquest giving way to something wiser in his gaze. "I was offered endless worlds and found them empty. In her heart, I discovered something worth more than a galaxy." As the council formally commenced its session, establishing foundations for cooperation that would span star systems, Elise realized that humanity's greatest triumph hadn't come through superior firepower or technology. It had come through what humans had always done best: connecting, adapting, loving despite differences. The fearsome warlord who once commanded legions now stood as her equal, her partner in building rather than destroying. His hand found hers beneath the council table, massive fingers carefully entwining with human ones, as together they began writing the next chapter of galactic history. 1,000 stars would bear witness. When offered a galaxy, he had chosen a single heart, and in doing so,